dear participants, good morning. Good morning for all of you. And just like to share, my slides. I am welcoming all of you to our webinar, Quality in Work-Based Learning, the way to maximize the value of professional higher education, which is organized by EURASHE, European Association of Institutions in Higher Education. Let me start from a short introduction of today's webinar agenda. As you see, I will shortly instruct about the rules of the webinar, how we going to manage and how we will arrange discussion and feedback from you. Then I will shortly introduce EURASHE as association, because the majority of the participants are not our members. So it is interesting what we are about. And then I will introduce Mr. Norbert Schöbel from DG for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion from European Commission. And after him, I will present the manuals developed in the project of ApprenticeshipQ, short ApprenticeshipQ. After me, it was not foreseen in the beginning, but we decided that it is important that few of our partners will supplement my presentation by their experiences, because they were from the very beginning of the project. And then we will have a panel discussion where Jon Altuna, Academic Vice Rector of Mondragon University, Nina de Winter, Executive Member of Student Union, Eva Fernandez from Unibas, and Adam Gajek from Eurochambers will present their opinions. Shortly about our rules. If you would like to intervene, please use your chat function to send a message, or you can write your questions to the questions and answers functions, and then we will look to your questions and transfer to the speakers if it will be needed. Please also take, I would like to take a note that all this event will be recorded because of the requirements of European Commission to submit the evidence of these events. So let me shortly introduce European Association of Institutions in Higher Education. We are main representative of professional higher education in Europe. Our mission is to lead a harmonization process of this sector across the European higher education area. Our association is continuously developing initiatives and supporting its members in strengthening this sector on a national and European level. We are representing the interests of professional higher education institutions in dialogue with the European Commission structures. We are facilitating the better understanding of European Commission policy for our members as well. Our mission is to strengthen the impact of innovative, highly professional higher education and related user-oriented research by representing our members and facilitating their multi-stakeholder cooperation and dialogue. The core EURASHE strategy is the implementation of our professional higher education mission, which is based on the three main pillars: relevant and flexible learning for modern society, innovation development through the user-oriented research, and focus on local needs, facilitating the regional engagement of professional higher education institutions. EURASHE activities cover a wide range of issues. It is a representation of members' interest in European institutions and stakeholders. Production of policy papers and documents and dissemination of information, different capacity building measures, including networking activities, conferences, and seminars. Due to the pandemic, we shifted a lot of our activities via online tools, organizing numbers of webinars as this went as well. And of course, we are in a number of projects. Currently, Russia has 66 full members, altogether covering more than 600 higher education institutions in 36 countries. The work-based learning, which we are discussing today in professional higher education, is one of the key themes of our association agenda during the last decade. We initiated or were and still are among the partners of the projects mentioned here. The results of the first one mentioned, I will present to you soon. More information about them you can find in our website. Besides the project mentioned, we developed the work-based learning charter for higher education. Currently, we consider this charter as a statement explaining our approach as a set of key principles of quality. But we're also discussing internally the other possible developments of the charter, including the recognition, institutional recognition of quality in institutional level, and we are going to continue this discussion with the representatives of employers. So far about Eurasia, and before I'll give the floor to Mr. Norbert Schöbel, we would like to know better the audience of this webinar. So let me invite you all to take part in the poll to answer a few questions. The first question is, are placements mandatory at your higher education institution? I understand that not all of you representing higher education institutions, but even not, but you know how it is in your country. It would be interesting to see the picture, what you're representing. Soon I say some results. Almost half of the participants already voted. May I just take a few seconds more, and I will say, probably you also see the results. The majority of the results shows that only some programs has a mandatory placements. Bigger part, yes, do, but we still have those who are not have the mandatory placements in your higher education. Let me then introduce second question, and it is to what extent do you have experience with work-based learning? Or is it really, you can evaluate yourself as experienced, or it's just some, or little, or none? And your voting says that the absolute majority have some and a lot. Together it is 75%, and the rest have a little experience or non-experience. So we more or less feel what is our audience. Then let me introduce, now let me introduce Mr. Norbert Schöbel, who represents DG for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion of the European Commission. Norbert has extensive experience in work-based learning developments, and now he is responsible for the implementation of European Commission policies like European Alliance for Apprenticeships, Skills Pact, European Vocational Skills Week, Education and Training 2020 working groups for VET and adult learning, and many, many more. Probably I not can list everything. Norbert, now floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vaidotas, and thank you for the invitation. And I can only say that it's your webinar is extremely important. Already, congratulations to your project, because it's really about linking the work-based learning elements between vocational education training and, of course, higher education. I think the first picture here, if you look at this, we have three people, and actually the lady in the middle is the link. No, work-based learning is the link, because we need it from both sides, wherever you come from. If you come from vocational education training, but also from the higher education sector, what we want is to promote this work-based learning element. I mean, there are also, of course, some very theoretical courses which may not need it, but more and more we recognize the fact that for young people, work-based learning experiences, placement, as you just said, which are not that regular in higher education, are really key for a better understanding and for the skills the companies need at the end, and also for our societies. So I think work-based learning is really the link. And I don't need to talk about the challenges of COVID. You mentioned it at the beginning. In addition to the big issues we have, the twin transition, as we call it, meaning we want to go more digital and we have to think about the greening. Unfortunately, this COVID did not help us. So there's an additional challenge where, of course, we're all aware of what we mean in distance learning. We have to actually rethink the way we teach. And not only for young people, unfortunately, the youth unemployment has already gone up and will raise more, because I don't think that COVID will be solved very quickly. So that's why I think in the next slide, I would give you a very broad presentation of what the Commission has done. And actually on the 1st of July, that's why we were quite busy, we have adopted 4 documents. This slide shows quite well that, of course, it's the lifelong learning perspective. We're thinking about young people, but we also think about the adults. And what was a part of these 4 documents was a new communication about youth employment, and directly related another proposal for a council recommendation on the youth guarantee, which is already an old instrument. At the same time, with a strong focus on upskilling and reskilling of adults, we have adopted a communication, as we call it, on a new European skills agenda. And to complement these elements with a lifelong learning perspective, I would say, is the proposal for a council recommendation on VET, which is now discussed under the German presidency. Now, the next slide, you will see that the skills agenda has, of course, important elements, such as strengthening the competitiveness of our companies, but it's also about ensuring social fairness, and particularly in the time of COVID, is to build on our resilience. So that is, I mean, the broad narrative of the skills agenda, which is also called Skills for Jobs. Now, the next slide, you can see that one big element among them, we have building blocks. So one I'm responsible is actually joining forces. And I can only count also on your support when we talk about joining forces, because you can also contribute to our skills agenda. One element is the Pact for Skills, which I mentioned in a second. I cannot explain all the different building blocks, but you can see that if you look at the next building block, which is skilling for a job, you can see that we have 4 and 5. 4 is highlighted because this is related on the recommendation on vocational education and training. But you can also see under 5 that there is a lifelong learning perspective and also a holistic approach, because we also tackle here the European universities. And under Erasmus, there will be more done for European universities network, common curricula, and so on. Then I just say that we also will further develop the tools. One very important one, which is very successful, is of course Europass, but we're also going more into micro-credentials. And one new element which exists in some countries, but not very commonly in France, for instance, but also some other countries, are the individual learning accounts. And all this needs to be accompanied. All this can only happen if member states invest into the upskilling and reskilling, and also the company, so private investment is needed. And you may be aware that the European Union has actually made also proposals for quite a huge number of funding available for different occasions. And just today I read that on the multi-annual framework, meaning the budget for the next 7 years to come, the European Union has just started the negotiations with the Parliament, because the European Parliament has also a say for that part of it. Now, all that is linked to the Skills for Life, but I just want to say in the next slide, one element joining forces is the skills pact, which our team is responsible. We don't do that alone. This will build and is closely related to what we do under apprenticeship, so the European Alliance for Apprenticeship, but also closely related to some of you might be aware of the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, which exists already. So we try to bring all these different initiatives together under one big umbrella on skills. What we want is to motivate large-scale partnerships, particularly also in the industrial ecosystem. We have identified 4 sectors. As you can imagine, some sectors are more touched by COVID, like the automotive sector, transport, all that, the health sector, construction, tourism. So all these, of course, are priorities, but it's open for all sectors at the end. We try to closely cooperate with social partners, but also all stakeholders in a way are invited to join the Pact, which normally, if everything goes right, will be launched during the European Vocational Skills Week in Berlin in November. Now, the next slide, and I try to be brief because I don't want to spoil too much of your time. The skills agenda has some very, I would say, very ambitious objectives. All these figures I will not explain in detail. All these quantitative objectives should be reached by 2025. It means in numbers I can give you if you want, and I can also send it in writing if you have questions, what it means in terms of numbers per year. It's quite impressive, but it is important because we need the adults to increase their commitment from themselves, because that's for sure, but also the commitment of employers to invest. And all that needs to be done, as I said, together with the support of the European Union, of the member states and all stakeholders. Now, let me come to the youth guarantee, just one slide, because as I said, it is something which already exists for a while. And I just want to say that apprenticeships, because it has 4, let's say the youth guarantee has, we talk about traineeships, we talk about apprenticeships, we talk about job offer or any other training for those who are in need, particularly needs, as we say, those which are neither in education or training. But apprenticeship does not yet play a very high role in the youth guarantee. I would say that the figures, I don't have them precisely in mind, but I think it was less than 4%. But we want to increase also the offers on apprenticeship under the youth guarantee. You can see that the age, and that brings us a little bit also to the higher education sectors, that also in VET and under youth guarantee, more and more we extend the age limit. France has done it also for apprenticeships, to not limit it to 25, but also to up to 30 years. We want to be more inclusive, more focused on preventions, and of course, stronger partnerships and linking to other quality frameworks. For instance, we have one framework on apprenticeship, which is called the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships. Now, the next slide, you can see that we have renewed the apprenticeship approach because we had started that with the Commissioner on the 15th of June. Our first goal is, and we see that in many member states, the number of apprenticeship is at risk, and in some countries it's going down. So our main goal is to maintain at least the supply. We don't want to get the supply goes down. And then we also want to continue the reforms which have been started already many years ago. And we want to renew the alliance. I can show you the next slide. What are the 6 key elements? This is just to see that the alliance exists still 2013. And we have all member states, candidate countries, and EFTA countries on board, 36 countries. And if we count all together the more than 300 individual pledges, we have already more than 900,000 offers provided through the alliance. But the next slide shows you what we mean by the renewed alliance. We want to promote national coalitions. We have them in some countries, like in Germany, Norway. That is very important. We need to support SMEs. We want to mobilize more the local and regional authorities. We want to reinforce the involvement of social partners, particularly at sector level. And last but not least, we have to think, and I think that's also a bit your goal, we have to think of the learner. So we want also to see how we can listen to the apprentices themselves. What are their objectives? What are their critical remarks? And now I think I want to come back to the next slide. Well, the 3 pillars for the moment, it's knowledge sharing, networking, which has changed, of course. The networking was a key element in person, but now it's all online. And bench learning is something we have copied, if I may say so, from the public employment services, which is a way of supporting the reforms in member states on apprenticeship. I can do another 1 hour on bench learning, but I think it's not the goal here to explain what we mean by that. So I think I should rather come to an end. The next slide shows you something which I think is the key element now for this seminar. The source comes from CEDEFOP, and CEDEFOP is our agency in Thessaloniki on vocational education training. And I think this is quite important because it shows the link between the more academic higher education and the higher VET, as we call it, and the professional higher education. And I would say that the European Quality Framework is, in a way, like work-based learning, our bridge or our translation machine, because this helps us to understand where to put. If we talk about higher VET, we mean actually mostly EQF level 5, but of course it goes up in some countries even to level 8. But I think that is very important. And I would say that all you do, and that's why when we talk about apprenticeship, I think what is important that we have to get together, but we also need to understand what we mean. For instance, there are terms like dual studies. There are, of course, apprenticeship degrees, which is located at the higher education level. So there's many terms which maybe create some confusion, but at the end, all we want to do is that for the young person, be it at the level of higher education or at the level of VET, that they get the most or the best training they need for their personal fulfillment, but also for their job career. And I don't need to say that Adam is in the panel, that of course chambers as well play a key role in that area. And if you have any questions, I'm with you. I thank you again for the invitation. And here you can see some links related to some of the key initiatives and support we give from the European Union. Thanks a lot for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Norbert, for your wide presentation. We are following the questions from the audience, and we also think that those people who are involved in the professional higher education particularly, we really faced a certain challenge due to pandemics. I understand how it is not easy to find now solutions, but we also we happy that the new European Commission started to think about that. But what would you think? We have a very short time to change something, but particularly the education related to work-based learning requires to touch things in the real world, or it's a dual education, or it's internships, or it's apprenticeships. Still, students or trainees should get the placements and go to the business, to the enterprises, and work together and accumulate experiences. And this, of course, was stopped, or on the bigger scale stopped, and people just waiting for the solution, how it can be, because it's a number of young people, or even not young, even those who are planning to be retrained, are waiting for the solutions. What would you see from the European Commission side of you? How would you encourage national governments to act in this direction?
Thank you for your question, and I fully agree. And particularly, young people are touched by this crisis, and it's even though this theoretical learning is easy to continue. I mean, easy, relatively easy. Yeah. I would say not, but there you can. The technologies allows it, but placements, meaning practical experience. If you cannot go with the lockdown, it started, and now particularly many companies are not in. They have other priorities than to take young people into and take additional risk that they come to the office or to come to the company. So that is really something very serious. All we can do is together. We need people like, I hope that the audience. Actually, we need people who raise the issue and, tell all those who have responsibility, please don't change your habit. On the contrary, invest now. Take these young people to your company. There are so many, now we have learned with COVID. I mean, we know now we know that we can wear a mask. We know that we can keep distance, all that we know. So we can, at the beginning, we couldn't really tackle the risk, but now we know how to deal with it. So I think we need motivated people who continue this. From our side, we are very committed. And as I said, not only we have adopted all these documents I presented to you, but also in terms of billions of euro, which will be available. Unfortunately, it takes time to, it's one thing to decide at the highest level. It will take time until when it will arrive concretely at a company or at a higher education institution. But there's a lot of possibilities, and mainly it's the member states. I don't need to explain you. They are responsible for education. So what we can do at European level is really raise the issue. The alarm bells, I can only highlight again, talk about it and invite those who have the responsibilities in the countries, in the member states, to act. The money is there, and if the money is not there, it's also important to take the money wherever it comes from, because we need to invest now. If not, it will also have an effect, and it has already. You know that if you think about the cohesion in the European Union, we get more and more divided. You know that some countries are, if I may mention, Germany, I'm coming from, the government works quite well, and a lot of the money has already arrived. And they're doing a good job, but unfortunately, some countries don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
For instance, apprenticeship have received, SMEs will receive bonuses if they take them, and France has also done that, Denmark, but there are only very few countries who have done that. Austria, I'm only knowing 4, maybe there are some others. I don't have the overview, but more needs to be done. Taking the good example and take the money wherever it comes from to invest. Sorry if I've been a bit long, but I think that's so important.
Okay. Thank you, Norbert, so much. Thank you for sharing with us your approach and what is going on in the Commission. And then let me take away my presentation back, and let me start my mission to this webinar, and let me present you our quality apprentices, manuals for quality apprentices in educational institutions and at placement providers. These manuals were developed as the results of Erasmus Plus K2 project mainstreaming procedures for quality apprenticeship in educational organizations and enterprises, shortly ApprenticeshipQ. Few words about how this project appears. Data on the employability in Europe illustrates that a significant number of young people are facing challenges during their transition from education to work, and that skills mismatches between labor demand and supply, especially the lack of work or practical experience, become a serious obstacle to young people's ability to enter the labor market. Work-based learning and apprenticeships particularly will combine education and training, which is different in the European member countries. Considering the advantages and the positive outcomes, what Norbert also mentioned, the extension of apprenticeship schemes in Europe is a desirable target. Apprenticeship schemes can also adapt to the changing market demand for skills much better than classroom-based education. When they are of high quality, apprenticeships empower young people for a smoother transition from education to the world of work, giving them a good start to their careers. Quality apprenticeships can also provide an attractive learning pathway for those young at risk or for dropping out early from the initial education. Employers also benefit as they get support to identify and train workers. But the reality is such that the partnership between professional higher education at all, and the world of work is still not strong, particularly in several European countries. There is a gap between the different understandings of the mutual combination of work and education, guidance and learning, theory and practice. Therefore, ApprenticesQ project developed the manuals for educational institutions and placement providers to help them in organizing high-quality apprenticeships. These manuals can serve as a basis for the development of formal international quality guidelines as well. The project started 3 years ago and is going to be finished at the end of this month. Duale Hochschule Baden-Württemberg from Germany is a coordinator of our projects, and other project partners are mentioned here in this slide. The project aimed to help main apprenticeship stakeholders by developing a clear framework for the quality management of practical phases to improve the transfer between theory and practice. We expect that the result of the apprenticeship project will improve employability by increasing the quality provision of apprenticeships because it can complement the quality standards already available and can show how to operationalize them most efficiently into practice. This is already very effectively done by partnerships between employers and educational institutions in Germany, in Austria, Netherlands, United Kingdom, and Denmark. In other European countries, apprenticeships are still not so effectively developed. At the beginning of the project, we had to come to a shared understanding of the concept and definition of the apprenticeships. The outcomes of desk research of European Commission, CEDEFOP, OECD and ENQA policy documents and different research papers we tested through a survey in 6 countries and worked together with experts from 8 European Union countries. And finally, we agreed on the following definition of apprenticeships presented in this slide. According to this definition, the partners analyzed the types of apprenticeships in 7 European countries and developed a typology of apprenticeships. This typology encompasses 2 types of apprenticeships, independent and cooperative apprenticeships. Independent apprenticeships are those organized and managed by employers without any involvement from educational institutions. They are not linked to any educational curricula, which means that the apprentices are not involved in any educational program. At the same time, even if the apprentices are involved in an educational program, there is no relations between the undergoing studies and the apprenticeships. Cooperative apprenticeships are those organized and managed in cooperation between educational institutions and employers. They vary in terms of governance, some being more employer-led and others more educational institution-led. But they are always associated with a curriculum and are designed as a means for students to put theory into practice and master knowledge in a way that empowers them with professional autonomy. This typology identifies different types of apprenticeships in Europe and harmonizes the dialogue between its providers across countries, as well as facilitate mobility and recognition schemes. Based on this typology, the project partners conducted interviews with educational institutions and placement providers to analyze the cases of best practice and identify success factors. The collection of best practice cases is presented on the website of the project. You can find them and study them. These best practice cases led to the development of 30 quality criteria, which were validated by a survey with more than 480 participants. The survey allowed participants to rank the criteria in order of importance, suggest improvements, reject criteria, or propose new criteria. The results of the survey showed that the participants regard all quality criteria as equally important. Therefore, no ranking was established. Thus, all 30 quality criteria were included in the final list. All quality criteria were evaluated by the 2 chambers of commerce and key stakeholders, as well as discussed in consultation workshops with the representatives of higher education institutions and the representatives of placement providers. The stakeholders have a shared responsibility for conducting high quality apprenticeships. Nevertheless, there are some quality criteria which are more in the responsibility of the educational institutions and some where the placement providers have a higher responsibility. Therefore, the quality criteria have been allocated either towards the educational institutions or towards the placement providers. Respectively, a set of 19 quality criteria were proposed for the educational institutions, 10 quality criteria were proposed for placement providers and one for both parties as a shared responsibility. On the basis of quality criteria, together with measurement indicators, were developed two manuals, respectively, for educational institutions and placement providers. The developed quality criteria are listed with their measurement indicators, which explain the individual criteria in more detail in each manual. Both manuals have a rather similar structure, but respective educational institutions or placement providers' quality criteria and measurement indicators are presented in the corresponding manuals. The 19 quality criteria for educational institutions are listed in the manual for educational institutions, and the 10 quality criteria for placement providers are listed in the manual for placement providers. And quality criteria, quality management procedures, equally for both, are provided for both in them. Each quality criteria and its importance is briefly summarized and then described in detail using the corresponding measurement indicators. The respective sub-items illustrate exactly what the quality criteria are about and help identify documented information already in place, as well as possible opportunities for improvement. To identify or evaluate a situation, users can use also self-check online tool, which is we are finalizing to develop. And I just going to show a few of these tables of quality criteria. This one, it was for the first quality criteria. Second, as you see, the structure is rather similar, just probably in some of quality criteria are the lesser descriptions or lesser measurement indicators. Third one, fourth one, the same. We can see for the quality criteria for the placement providers starting from the 20th. And as I told, both of these quality criteria contains the quality processes. As you see also in these quality criteria sheets, there are access to the forms or to the templates where the examples of documents are presented for the users to understand better how experienced organizations used to solve these problems in their environment. And there are also such a yellow boxes with real examples where you can find and description of how it works in the particular organization, and you can probably find the contacts for sharing of these experiences. Yeah. So users, both users and representatives of educational institutions and placement providers can fill in the respective manual tables or online tool, and can serve the situation which is currently they have in their organizations to analyze further on. But doing this periodically, you can see how situation can be improved, because the results can show the gaps what the organization is missing at the moment. After that, after this evaluation, let's say evaluation part of the manuals, there is a quality management approach presented for the users and explained how can be used, particularly spreaded plan, do, check, act cycle methodology, particularly for those who didn't adopt it yet, but it's also good to remind those who use it as well. And of course, this approach is focusing and encourage, develop organization towards the strategic planning and strategic management, because quality management can't exist without organizational strategic management as well. And this one is also mentioned by HVET proposal for those that is strengthening some themes for the quality cycle methodology, stressing the goal settings and strategic planning, rules or regulations, monitoring, analysis of factors contributing to quality and management of change, and new strategic planning as well. And therefore, quality criteria can be allocated as it's shown in this slide. Some quality criteria can be assigned to several steps in the PDCA cycle. There is no clear differentiation between the steps. At which point the respective quality criteria are to be assigned depends on the specific measurement indicators used in individual organizations. And supplement to PDCA cycle, the MERI compass is mentioned in these manuals, and it assumes that the development of a quality culture is strongly influenced by soft skills based on the human factor. These soft skills are presented as a complementary to the hard skills used in the PDCA cycle. Thus, this MERI cycle refers primarily to the creation of internal quality culture and underlines the importance of human relationship, which are characterized by mutual respect and encouragement. Although the quality criteria do not specialize in soft skills, some of them, especially which promote exchange between educational institutions or placement provider and apprentice students, can be taken for consideration. So it is so far from my side about these manuals. And now I would like to invite you again for the second round of our polls. And could you please reply to the few questions we are going to present you now. Yes, what is the situation regarding the quality assurance of placements in your institution or country? Is it fully integrated in the quality assurance system? Is it important but not fully addressed, formalized? Is it based on just ad hoc or not systemized approach? Or placement are not much supported by quality assurance? Or is it not applicable at all? It is very important issue because still observing the situation, we are not sure that placements or practical experiences are really so encouraged and evaluated during the quality assurance systems in the higher education institutions. And we consider as a shortage of this situation. And it is, I think that it is really very important to develop them. As we see that on 43% who answered this question, that it is a good situation, it's fully integrated in the quality assurance systems. But still, there is not enough formalized in almost other situations, which is also forced us to think about it and to think how it can be formalized in the proper scale. And please now answer another question. Would you find it useful to have some common European quality principles for quality of work-based learning? Very useful as a standards or guidelines, somewhat principles as an inspiration, or not much. It is up to higher education institution and national authorities, or they are not important at all. And I would say that absolute majority is for common useful principles. And it is not surprising me, because that this situation is such, because that when we have the common understanding of these principles, it's facilitating us to much better mobility, much better understanding to each other. And of course, it facilitates much better results of higher education institutions. So, and the last one, would you find it useful to have an institutional recognition of quality of work-based learning provisions? I mean, institutional recognition, how it is in each or individual institutions. Is it very useful? Is it somehow useful, or not very useful, or not important at all? It relates our further discussion regarding work-based learning charter, because we have also two approaches, and we think that both approaches are important and useful. Just probably it's not easy to find the solution but I see that the majority of participants really are for this institutional recognition of quality of work-based learning provision. It's not surprising me at all, of course, but because it is important for institutions to feel, is it okay? Is it can be improved? So thank you very much for your answers. I've got some questions, and okay. What's the question? More information on independent apprenticeship. I can't say more information about independent apprenticeship because it's not related to any institution. It depends on the initiative of students. If they would like to find their own way of accumulating their practical experiences. And so in this way, no institutions are involved. And in some countries, that is allowed simply, but then the recognition of the results can be, questionable. Another question came to me. Are the bureaucratic requirements for apprenticeships more challenging than those for university degrees? If so, could this be inhibiting factors? Of course, we always think that at least higher education, it has their autonomy to decide just those, let's say, rules which is encourage or help higher education institutions to reach better results in general sense. It is good, but nevertheless, we understand that it is one better than let's say minimal bureaucratic requirements can facilitate for the better, but not pressing or limiting higher education institutions and their activities. Okay, so now we have a possibility to join to our partners. I just like to stop my sharing probably. Yeah, okay. And I would like to invite Alicia Miklavčić and Michal Zimšek, who were and still are contributing a lot for this project. Alicia is one of the project team creative leaders, and both of them represent the Association of Slovene Higher Education Colleges. And please, floor is yours, and we listening you. Alicia, you should.
Sorry, yes, after so many months we should be used to it, but we always forget some detail. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us. I think these quality criteria and standards are a very good guideline, as was mentioned also in the chat. It should be used as a guideline, not some restrictive, let us say, document. Nevertheless, we would also like to show you that we are not only working on this, but we are really complementing work that we do amongst us. And that's why I would like to share my screen just to show you that based on the quality criteria that and guidelines that were mentioned there, we are also building for institutions an apprentice track tool, which is a tool that will offer quite an easy way to monitor the apprentices, which will also make it easier to do the quality assurance of it, simply based on the indicators and the measurement criteria. We built a prototype that will be used by students, mentors, and supervisors in the institutions to really support the full process. I will show you later also the functionalities of it very quickly. We are starting next week with the course for mentors. It will be also recognized with 3 ECTS, and at the end we have a prototype of validation. Just for you to see the prototype functionalities, you see that students, companies, meaning more or less mentors, and colleges have, let us say, a wide variety of functionalities, really how to address, how to start, how to propose placements, select placements, even the matching between companies and students is really provided, then access to different apprenticeship plans, competence lists, everything in one place, accessible to the students, to the company, and to the supervisor in one place. Also the assessment of all the competencies that are agreed in the agreement, as well as the final assessment and certificate, as well as the evaluation. So this is a very good system and prototype tool that will really enable clear quality let us say, monitoring of the apprenticeship, and will definitely be easier to follow and trace all the issues and appeals that happen, which will enable quick and easier response from the institutions as well. Just a bit more on the opportunities, because I want to be very short. We want this tool really to make it as an interactive application in the future, to join also with all the European tools like Europass, HVET, ESG, etc. Erasmus without paper. It is now already in 4 languages. We hope that in the future it might be translated to all European languages, so it can use also for Erasmus mobilities then in each language. And also the functionalities that we would like to really then add to those are really distance learning, graduate tracking, which is important, I think, for companies as well as for institutions, micro-credentialing and competence trends tracking and labor market needs tracking. Those we think is very important, and this is something that we would definitely like to add to this. And with this, I would just like to stop saying that you can see that we are working on a lot of projects that are really complementing each other. We have training for mentors, training for leaders, regional development, so many different things. You are welcome to contact us for any more information that you need. And now I leave the word to the panelists and others if you have questions or whatever, or if anyone would like to add anything.
Please, panelists, react on the experiences. Alicia actually reminded me that I forgot to say that these manuals, we developed, will be translated to the German, to Spanish, to Portuguese, and to Slovene languages. And but having them in English, it is opening for everyone to translate them themselves. And it is, of course, important, maybe not so for higher education institutions, but particularly for the companies, where sometimes it is the barrier of not mother tongue languages and so on. But thank you so much, Alicia. Can we now just take a look to the questions or hear the questions? No, not at the moment. We don't have the questions. So then, sorry, how can I get the course for mentors of apprenticeship management? The Georgiana Luminita and Anescu from probably Romania. I'm just, probably it is the question to Alicia.
Yes, well, Georgiana, the course is, as I said, is starting next week in Slovenia, and within the next 2 weeks also in the Czech Republic and Croatia. It will be on our webpage within a week, so all the documents and handbooks for moderators, mentors, etc. will be on our webpage. Nevertheless, you are very welcome to contact us, and we will give you further information for that. I hope I have answered very quickly your question, and you are very welcome to contact us.
Thank you, Alicia. Now I would like to invite our panelists to join our webinar. And now I just have to say that we invited 4 prominent people to share their experience in the work-based learning developments and apprenticeships as well as share their opinions of the developed manuals. Before I start this discussion, I just encourage all panelists to be proactive and react to each other and share your experiences and maybe different point of views. Now I would like, yes, and the questions for panelists I will present after we will discuss more or less all panelists will take floor. So let me introduce the first panelist. It's Jon Altuna, PhD, academic vice rector of Mondragon University, Basque Country, Spain. For the beginning, may I ask you, dear Jon, you are one of the top leaders of the project partner university. So how you see the developments of work-based learning and apprenticeships, including from the academic and the university business cooperation point of view?
Right. Thank you so much, Rasha, for inviting me to this panel discussion. Let me just briefly give you a little bit of context about our university. The Mondragon University is a non-profit cooperative university, as my daughter Angelina said, from the Basque Country in North Spain. And we are a member of the biggest business corporation in Mondragon, which is in the Basque Country, which is Mondragon Corporation. And we are characterized by our close relationship with industry, which in turn enables us to adapt to our training offer and also the profile, the professional profile of our graduates. As you said, I mean, we have been partners, academic partners of the ApprenticeshipQ project, and I think we have contributed with our experience in cooperative apprenticeships. And also with the network of institutions we have been collaborating with for more than 50 years. I think it is worth highlighting that the participant institutions in this project share the same philosophy. I think it's quite relevant about the relationship between the students, the university, and also the world of work. And we also noted that our cooperative education models are different in each country in Europe, but we have also recognized a common basis in them, which is also very relevant and important. Most of the participant institutions have been, I think, firmly rooted in professional higher education. And another feature that we also share is that we are somehow linked to a strong industrial ecosystems, which I think is also relevant for the development of work-based learning. And there are other features, but I would like to just note one of them, a very singular and unique feature, which is the participation of members from industry in our governing boards in quite a number of participant institutions. The outcome of the research presented by Mr. Vaidotas Biliunas resulted, I think, not just in this 30 quality criteria, but I would like to just pinpoint the fact that we have been able to identify and outline some best practices from partner institutions and stakeholders. So let me just let you know that we have recently conducted a multiplier event with the stakeholders who have participated in this research, which has been very rich indeed. I mean, and I would like to share just a few ideas that came out of it, if you consider. The first one is the fact that all participants in this research project, we all acknowledge that implementation of cooperative education is complex. And there was a question about guidelines, and the lack of European and in some countries like Spain, even national guidelines to support them seems to be also preventing new providers in the sector just to embark on apprenticeship programs, which is quite an important burden. The participants in this project, companies, most of them small and medium enterprises, higher education institutions, quality agencies, and whatever. And they all acknowledge that and consider that the manuals that have been generated in the project are very useful, since they provide very clear information on what are the main elements to be considered in a cooperative education. And they have also found relevant, and there was a question of quality assurance raised in just previously, and they also found relevant that the fact that these manuals can serve to support and improve the quality assurance management systems of higher education institutions and companies that are running cooperative education programs. There was another topic which emerged, and it's the fact that the day-to-day running and the day-to-day operations of each institution, whether academic, whether business institution, means that sometimes we have a few documented and explicit processes on how to manage cooperative education. And this gives us a limited vision of all the activities involved in cooperative education. But it's also fair to say that many of these activities are already very well executed in our institutions. Therefore, just as a summary, the use of these manuals, I think it was acknowledged that it helps a lot to have global vision of all the processes that are involved in cooperative education. And also these manuals will explain better the documents generated in each quality criterion. And we are quite sure that this will certainly allow the student experience to be much better and a better quality, which is our final objective. There was the question about the regulation as well in cooperative education. And the participants, and I need to say that the participants were located mostly in the Basque region, and they highlighted the need for a contract adapted to cooperative education characteristics, which is not available in all European countries. There are some European countries who have very powerful and very strong regulations, contractual regulations for that cover apprenticeship education, but that is not the case in all European countries. There was also the issue about regulations that can subsidize or incentivize business participation, and also the issue of to improve social recognition of the activity within the company. Yeah. And there was another topic related to the legal coverage of international mobility of apprentices between companies in Europe and also outside Europe, which is another issue which is very particular to apprenticeship programs, and it's a clear burden nowadays. Yes. And just overall, the criteria and indicators which were considered most relevant were the involvement of stakeholders in designing the learning outcomes, the tutoring of students and their experience. As I said, the recognition by the company of the contribution of the tutor, it's really important. Yeah. The definition of the roles of different agents that intervene in cooperative education, not just the mentors or tutors. And finally, there was the question of integration of the apprenticeship company. Those were just the main ideas that were captured in our last multiplier.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Jan. It was very important to hear your opinion about this process, because you definitely participated yourself in this process, and you felt these reflections on this process. Now, may I introduce Nina de Winter. She's a representative of the European Student Union, and she have a rather wide responsibilities. Maybe, Nina, you tell yourself better, and it is very important to hear how students see these processes currently taking place in European Union. In your school, your experience, share with us your opinions, please.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's amazing that there are so many things going on right now concerning apprenticeships, because I think it's becoming more and more important to students to have some kind of learning experience before they officially enter the labor market. And that's, of course, also a problem that has been identified by Russia and by the project. So I really hope that more and more students also get to know all these initiatives that are going on, because I think that's very important. That's sometimes also still a little bit lacking. There's a lot of amazing initiative, and I hope that this will also in the end like become really implemented in the higher VET and the institutions and the universities of applied sciences. Because I think it's a valuable experience for all students. I think eventually, even on the academic level, there are many opportunities and possibilities to implement those kind of initiatives. And secondly, I think it's also very important to mention on this, like on the perspective from the European Students' Union, that it would be amazing if more and more people can also have on the higher VET level the experience to do an apprenticeship abroad, and to even like widen it beyond the local or the national context. And I think that's also, of course, like in the current time, it's maybe a little bit difficult to say this because we already have to kind of completely rethink our idea of being physical mobile. But I really hope that soon this will be able and be possible again. So of course, I've also tried to like put it a little bit into the scope of like COVID-19 and what's happening. And I think even in these times, like making certain quality guidelines is even more important, because there is many possibilities and opportunities for people to still have a practical experience. But it's even more difficult to make this very like quality, to make it into a quality experience. But I have a lot of like, you see that one part of like the people that were doing an internship or an apprenticeship had really difficulties finishing it, or had to stop it, or have to do it again. And you also see that there's a lot of companies and higher education institutions that rethought their idea of doing this apprenticeship or internship and just found a way to finish it online. For example, my sister, she's in a University of Applied Sciences, and together, like in the communication between the company that she was doing her internship in and her higher education institution, they found the perfect way to still finish it. And I think this is also quality, right? To have this communication between the two. And I think that's also something that should be highlighted a lot when we talk about best practices in the manual, and when we talk about like what kind of things are the individual responsibility of either the education institution or the provider. I think this communication and working together is super important. And for that reason, and that's a little bit of bridge to what has been mentioned already before, and of which I'm also super happy that it's mentioned so much in the manual, is that it's super important to involve the stakeholders into this whole process. So of course, involve the students, please, like that's the main message I want to give here. Like you can only have a quality experience if you're completely involved into like, how do I want to learn? What do I want to learn? How is this gonna go in like the communication between where I'm doing my apprenticeship and where I'm having my education, but also involve the providers in the curriculum design, in like the boards that that decide on like how are you gonna formulate the contracts, etc., etc. So I would really want to highlight once more that this like triangle between the institution, the provider, and the apprentice is like super important for it to be successful. And that's also where, of course, it's getting a little bit tricky, because the guidelines are super important on a European level, but in the end, it's very like on the low level, like this triangle that's making the difference for the individual student or the individual apprentice. And yeah, I really hope that these manuals and these guidelines, and especially sharing best practice, can be highly contributing to that.
Thank you, Nina. Of course, it is pleasant to hear nice words, but you know, nice words, it's not encouraging to move further. So would you have any critics to that, you know, because, you know, you should feel millions close to you or representing you, what their opinions. Sometimes, you know, work-based learning or apprenticeships, there is a, let's say, additional headache for students that they should combine academic branch or knowledge, theoretical education, and then extra to that, arrange additional efforts to collect this practical skills. I don't know, is it really a majority of students are supporting this, or just those who are really thinking brightly about their future? And please tell something about that.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think it's necessarily only good words. Like, it's more encouragement, because there's a lot of things that we should still like really work on. And then concerning your question, I think the most important thing is to integrate it much more into the programs, because that's the only way to make it successful and for students understandable why they are doing this. And that you can only reach by involving both the students and the providers into the design, the curriculum, and into the design of the apprenticeship or internship. So I think for a lot of students, it's very like they really want this practical experience. Definitely, I completely believe that when I see that around me, that many people graduate without having the feeling that they are prepared enough to do what they want to do. And I think also that you can use the time that you are doing, that you are getting this practical experience to learn what you actually still have to learn before you can fully express yourself on the labor market, so to say. But then the thing is, this needs to be integrated and this needs to be very well guided, because just leaving people like in a company and or in an organization and they have to figure it out, that's of course not the way it works, or that they have to do a lot of effort to find something themselves or to do it besides their studies. Like, especially this integration part and this doing it together part are crucial, and they are mentioned a lot in the manuals, but not so much happening still when I look around me.
May I just turn another way of thinking? You see, we developed two types of manuals, or not two types, but two manuals. One for higher education institutions, one for placement providers. Don't you miss the manual for students?
Yeah, maybe yes, but I don't think it's like, given the fact that it's not there, like, I don't know if that's a problem, but it's also like, and this is also very much my personal opinion. Also, when I'm presenting about like curricula of the future, etc., I always say like, okay, but there's also a responsibility that students themselves have to make it successful and to turn it into something successful. And this is something that should be completely guided, of course, by the provider and the higher education institution. But yes, it's a triangle. In my opinion, it's a complete triangle. But given the fact that you have these two manuals, I would say like at least highlight in both of the cases that you cannot do it without the student itself.
Okay, thank you, Nina. Of course, in the process of development of these manuals, we all the time consulted with students, and they were not forgotten. And of course, would be very unwise to go this way. So we try to integrate all interests of students and at least to leave them possibility also to intervene and to change them in the future, to develop them in the future. They are not the Bible that is stable. The life is changing, and we also should follow these changes as well. So thank you so much, Nina. Now, may I invite Eva Fernandez de la Bastida. She's the internationalization and project manager from UniBasque, the agency for quality of the Basque University system. And may I ask you, Eva, you take part in intensive cooperation with ANQA and ECHA. How do you see the development of work-based learning from the quality assurance point of view? Does current quality assurance standards fully correspond to the requests of work-based learning developments? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation of taking part in this webinar. And sure, I mean, I was not part of the project, of course, because the university is not partner of the project, but we have been collaborating from the beginning, so we know more or less what you have been doing from the beginning, and we have done some comparisons with the ESG. And, you know, the ESG are quite broad, and they are flexible.
Excuse me, Eva, could you speak closer to the microphone?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Do you hear me? Sure. What I was trying to say is that the ESG are not prescriptive, and they are quite broad and flexible, so they can provide a space for any provision. And in fact, it is very clear that the ESG say that any provision that is given by a university or by a higher education institution should be covered by the ESG, by part one, of course, and from the quality assurance agency point of view, we should take into account that. It is true that John already said that at least in Spain, for example, we don't have a clear regulation for work-based learning. We have some Spanish regulations for placements, but there are more or less some requirements. We have some specific regulations in the Basque Country. We can go back to that later if you want, because there was a requirement from the Basque government in the last decree to do a categorization of the study programs that we have in the Basque university system regarding some characteristics. One was the internationalization of the programs, another one was the use of innovative methodologies for teaching and learning, and the last one was the link with companies or some other industries or whatever, and that we should do some kind of categorization. So there were some indicators and some characteristics and requirements that should be taken into account. And from there, we develop this dual label recognition for some programs. And till now, we have done like around 35 recognitions of programs that meet this kind of requirements. Everything is published on our website. And the good thing, because I don't remember who was talking about that, yeah, maybe it was John before, regarding the recognition of this kind of work-based learning and how society can trust it, or even how institutions, because there are some academics that might be a little bit reluctant regarding work-based learning. And the good thing was that we have the support of the Basque government as well, because there is one university business strategy 2022 that was approved in 2017 that already established some initiatives like the developing of this dual label. And even there was the option, if I remember right, that there was like international dual programs where part of the placement or all the placement should be done internationally in an industry that is abroad. But as long as I know, that part is already without developing. I don't know if I answered your questions or more or less.
What other panelists think about the Eva's approach? It's interesting to hear, Jon. What you of course have the closer relation because of the same geographical region on the standards. It is important, of course, but we also sometimes think that there can be the certain contradictions if we talk about the flexibility of higher education system, about possibilities of the developments, And again, about standardization and what should be followed. Yes. So how you will see these let's say two sides.
Well, in my opinion, the fact that well, I'm quite positive about the fact that working on a set of quality criteria, and Nina also pinpointed the fact that these quality criteria were built with all stakeholders who take part in cooperative education. I'm quite positive in the sense that this quality criteria would eventually lead to some kind of national, regional, and even I see them as a European, some kind of European guidelines. And I think that will be really important. I mean, just for the prospect of expanding cooperative education. So I'm quite happy that within this framework of this research project, we have collaborated with governments, quality assurance agencies, students, companies, higher education institutions, and all together we are bringing, on top of the agenda, the issue of cooperative education and the regulation on that. So there's, I think Norbert also mentioned about it's time for European and national education policymakers and just to raise awareness of cooperatives higher education. I'm quite positive that for the future, cooperative education will be a key part of higher education, and experiential learning will be a key point in all educational models in higher education. So I'm quite happy to bring this set of quality criteria to the agenda of the ministries of education and at the European level. But I think there's also the issue about employment, and I think it's quite clear that cooperative education is also very relevant for many companies in their strategies to attract and retain talent, and also for specialization. I think the future challenges like climate change, digitalization will just completely change the landscape of professions, of industry, and the future of work. And I think the unique feature of our institutions who collaborate in cooperative education give us a tremendous opportunity just to be aligned with what changes will be happening in the landscape of employment and the world of work. Because just we are working together and we are understanding these changes much better than other academic institutions. And from that perspective, I see a terrible opportunity for cooperative education in the future.
Thank you, Jan. So, try to think probably in the times when we studied the dynamism of research was slightly higher compared to the changes in the industries or in businesses. Now probably businesses are ahead of it, and they are encouraging the changes, and sometimes they are creating the conditions for changes. And now the cooperation between research and businesses changed a lot, and I think it's just a very integrated cooperation can be a future of common developments. But now I would like to invite the fourth, our plenarist, Adam Gajek, who is a policy advisor at Euro Chambers, but he also have interesting past. He used to be as the president of European Student Union. So please, Adam, share your let's say opinion. You was one of the evaluators, let's say, or external experts for these manuals. You understand what is going on but probably you can say a bit more from the employer's point of view. What do you think about them? Are they useful, not useful, or they are just partly covering some interests? Do we have some area for further development? Or I'm just also not limiting you regarding talk about the manuals. Now you see the picture much more wider, the trends, how businesses are developing, how employers are looking for, let's say, changing or updating their staff. So please, floor is yours. Share with us your point of view.
Great, thank you, Vaidotas, very much for inviting me. First of all, please tell me if you can hear me well. Okay, that's perfect. So first of all, hello everybody, and also I want to apologize for possible problems with connections because I'm actually now on holidays on the beach in Greece, and I'm using Wi-Fi here, so it might be problematic. So in case there are some interruptions, please tell me. Anyway, how can I start? So first of all, some words about my organization. So my organization represents chambers of commerce and industry throughout Europe. It's called Your Chambers, as was nicely introduced by Vaidotas already. And we have a grave interest in apprenticeships, most of all, and also in the work-based learning in general as well. And this is because in all of the research that we've been conducting recently, the results say that most of the employers see that there are really a wide skills mismatches around Europe. Like, for example, at the last edition of our event, European Parliament of Enterprises in 2018, 84% of our entrepreneurs which were participating said that it was harder for them to find staff with right skills than 5 years before. What means that all these changes in the labor market, they are very, very fast, and education cannot keep up with this speed. That's why we see that the work-based learning is one of the best ways which can help the labor market to come up with some solutions. In general, our network, our national members, regional members of our national members have quite an experience with apprenticeships, most of all, since according to our estimations, 80% of chambers of commerce and industry in Europe are involved in education and training, and almost 50% of them deliver some kind of vocational educational training. And it accounts for less than, but around 2 million people receiving training qualifications from members of the chambers of commerce and industry network in Europe. That's quite a lot. But what is important here is that this cooperation of chambers, most of all, is mostly focusing on secondary education, vocational education on secondary level. And we see more and more importance of working on vocational higher education, which of course is important for closing the gaps for the higher skills, because also according to some of our researches, the skills which are most needed at the labor market are the most basic one, and also the most advanced one, the high skills. So this is a very good way in which we can help closing this gap. So the higher vocational education, which of course in some countries quite well developed, in other it's let's say like not that developed, but for sure it's very diverse in Europe. It's more diverse probably than the academic education, and that's why for example the ESG, so European Standards and Guidelines, who apply very well for higher education, they do not have this component for professional education, and that's why this project this manual. They are like very nice idea to complete this gap, which is left for assessment of quality of the professional education, because it builds on the ESGs, and that's also very visible in the manual that many points there, they are inspired or even like basically taken from the ESGs, what is very good, because ESGs should apply, and this is what they say, to all kinds of higher education, but it gives them also like the specific aspect for professional education. And I think it's very, very important. And from our point of view of the chambers, which are mostly building connections with the higher VET, this is something which may come up as a useful tool for future cooperations, for current cooperation, to maybe review them or build some programs based on this manual and based on the outcomes. So I think it's very important to invite businesses and also chambers as well, which are very interested in vocational education, to this new initiatives on higher education and vocational education. Also, this new incentives from the European Union policies, like for example, micro-credentials, which can also create a very nice synergies between private sector and higher education in terms of building the short courses, maybe provided jointly. This is a place where we're going to have some space to work together, I think.
Thank you very much, Adam. Of course, we rely very much on the Chambers network for the spreading of these project results, and then really important that not only higher education institutions or umbrella organization will spread that, but also this encouragement will go through the chambers for the employers. It is really important and convincing. I'd like to ask you, all of you, do you have any questions to each other? Wouldn't you like to ask to each other anything now, for the moment at least? Because I also still have some questions for you. Okay, let me, oh yeah, Eva, please. Unmute, please, unmute.
Yeah, I think it's working right now. I have a question, it's for you, but it's as well for John, because you were part of the project. And there's one comment that I remember that we were discussing in the agency when we were checking one of the first versions of the manuals, and was if you didn't think about doing a joint manual for both, for the institutions and for the companies, and the students could be involved there as well. I mean, if you do just one manual, maybe all the jointness will be better seen.
Jon, can you? Okay, as much as I remember, we also discussed this, and of course I found your remark during the evaluation that it can be one let's say one document or one publication, but still we had some reflections from employers that even current manual for employers is too detailed and too sophisticated. So they even asked to look for the much more simplified way. But still, project developers, we didn't agree that to simplify more than current final result we've got, because still there is issues which is really should be took into consideration, and missing them again, then we will not cover the interests of students, or you know, it will go out of the control in some processes which should be assured in the placement providers. It's my opinion. Jon, can you add something?
No, I mean, I had the same in mind. I think it was like sometimes our academic language is totally different from the language that the companies are used to. So it was like trying to make it as simple as possible and make it as useful as possible for them to improve their internal processes and to see what is under their responsibility. Because sometimes, I mean, we have the trend to incorporate all that it's in cooperative education. But sometimes companies need to know what is related to their own responsibility.
It is important that the results of apprenticeship should be recognized. And if we are not reaching minimum standards, minimum results of something, what is, let's say, coded into the learning outcomes, then these apprenticeships have no value. And this is not, can be, you know, then recognized and formalized at the end of the studies for the students. And they of course, then they will lose something. Nina, what do you think about that? If we will just simplify manual for placement providers, just one page, let's say, principles and just it.
Well, I have to say that this is maybe a question that you can better ask to Adam, but I mean, from the perspective of the students and the apprentice, I would just want to highlight that I think it's still often very unclear for the provider what they should actually do to offer a quality apprenticeship to students. And I think many, especially smaller companies, are very much struggling with what do we have to offer or how do we have to fit it into the daily routine of our organization. And then I think it's quite important to have a manual that will kind of guide you. But I would say, like, sharing best practices and having a platform where you can read about how to do this is maybe also a little bit less terrifying than seeing all these things that you have to like do and fulfill in order to offer a quality apprenticeship. Like, was like reading through it, and I thought, I can imagine that as a small medium enterprise, you think like, yeah, but I cannot do this. I cannot offer a quality internship if I have to do all these kind of things before I can do that. So in that sense, yeah, it would make sense to shorten it. But on the other hand, from the student's perspective, I would say, wow, it is quite important that you really think of how to fit this into your organization, because otherwise this apprentice ends up making copies and bringing coffee because there's nobody who has time to properly help someone. So yeah, I think that is also the balance you kind of have to seek, and therefore I think especially sharing best practices is super important.
Thank you, Nina. Adam, can you react on that or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to say something more because, like, Nina made me think about one big issue which is connected with work-based learning, because I think like the next stage in this kind of research might be also maybe not the different guidelines, but coming up with different ways that big companies and small companies can approach work-based learning, because there's like a huge difference if you have a big company with resources, with schemes in which they teach apprentices or interns how to approach something, and then you have like small companies where you have few people working and they don't have financial resources but also time resources to spend on first teaching somebody to do the job, but also with all of the bureaucracy, which is enormous if you work with universities. And I think everybody know that here. And also giving, like, this will be like more personal opinion, working in a smaller company is very often much more enriching than working for a huge one, because in terms of like the student experience, or this like since the SMEs have more like this personal experience for people, so this is something what is very, very important to build some schemes, some financial ways, so also smaller as a company, so small medium companies are able to host apprentices there as well. And I think this is something what should be taken into consideration very much, because this is like a future of work-based learning, I think.
Thank you, Adam. Now, for the more or less wrapping up our webinar, can you please take a look to the chat? There is the question of Michal Karpišek, the Secretary General of Eurasia, where he's probably it is a bit on the top, not on the end, but he's generally asking how you would see the further developments of this work-based learning, let's say, direction, apprenticeship developments, and cooperation between professional higher education and employers or world of work. Can I just address to each of you your own approach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like shortly want to reply to that. Like, there's going to be a lot of challenges for quality assurance and recognition, I think, and I hope in the future of education, because what I truly hope is that we're going to see like the whole pathway of learning much more flexible, as that you have to do everything between the age of 18 and 23, and then you finish and then you work. And I think this is something that we all like kind of have in mind with lifelong learning, etc., etc. But we see that if you want to learn when you're a little bit older, things are getting complicated. When it comes to like finances, it's getting way more expensive. The recognition of your qualifications, it's super difficult. Recognition of a diploma you obtained like 10 years ago, impossible. Like all this kind of things, it's gonna have a lot of implications for recognition and quality assurance. But I hope we're gonna work on that very soon, especially on the recognition part. And that's also like really also a question to all the education providers that are here in the room. Please like make this common effort to be able to recognize certain skills and certain competencies, etc., because I really hope that this flexibility is going to be much more in our higher education and educational systems.
Thank you, Nina. Who is following?
Okay. I will just highlight, I would like to just highlight as the future. I think that was one of the questions that we raised in our multiplier event. And most of the participants I agree that it's probably we are on the right track, right? But it's probably now the time for quality, to put the focus on quality of cooperative education, rather than increasing, for instance, the number of apprentices in cooperative education. It's probably now the right time to focus on quality. And in that sense, I think Nina also raised the question about governance. And I also highlighted the fact that the cooperative education management is very complex. And we know, and for SMEs is even more complex, and for academic institutions it's also complex, right? So in that complexity, setting up the right governance model, it's quite important. We have seen that in the pandemic, for instance, when from one day to another we had to take very sudden decisions just to put off some placements and whatever. It has been, and it's really important to bring on board all decisions that we make, both the students, both companies, and both academic institutions and quality agencies as well, and also government, which is also involved in this pandemic situation. It's also one of the most important stakeholders. There's also the issue about technology and digitization. I think the virtual reality tools and technology can enable and give us opportunities to increase the student experience and just improve the student experience. And I think we should also focus on that. We have seen that physical placements suffer in this pandemic. So we need to also rethink about new alternatives that will bring us, I mean, just the same competencies that the students will be working on the physical placement. I talked about regulation. I think I put a lot of emphasis on the fact that we need correct regulations. Just one example that we had is that during the pandemic, all student grants were suspended due to the fact that we didn't have a contractual framework for apprenticeships. And that would never happen if we had the right contractual framework put in place for cooperative education. And I think the final question that Nina also raised is recognition. For recognition, we need quality criteria. We need to agree between quality agencies, governments, higher education institutions on the set of guidelines that we need to work with just in order for cooperative education to be recognized within our national framework, but also international framework.
Thank you, Jan. Eva, yes, please.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to calm down everybody because I received a question concerning the changing rooms behind me. They're closed and not used, so nobody's gonna come out of them. The second thing is that I agree with Nina about many things concerning especially the recognition. That is very, very important. But also we have to remember that the credits that students are gaining to work through work-based learning is often assessed by people who are employed by the companies. And here is that important issue of training and good cooperation between a university and people who are mentors in companies, because people who are mentors, they need to know how to assess the students' progression, and they need to know how to be able to do the assessments, and also university then needs to know how to do recognition and how to support each other. So there is this very important point that also needs to be not only kind of checked in a quality assurance, but also needs maybe a thorough methodology, and also needs preparation for people involved in it that does not require also, as I said before, lots of additional bureaucracy, because this is something about the skilling education, especially on when you have cooperation of many actors.
Thank you, Adam. And Eva, can you just also share your opinion about it?
Yeah.
Particularly in the context of the standardization, because you are of this representative, yeah.
Yeah. I think that starting with recognition, I think that there are lots of works being done, mainly with the Enigmatics network. They are doing a great job, and there are huge steps ahead for automatic recognition, and they are working as well on the recognition of prior learning. The main problem, at least here in Spain, is that we have a very strict regulation with which can be recognized or not. And we have quite limited options for recognition of prior learning, or even with the draft of the Royal Decree. There were changes that theoretically were good for recognition, so they could help going through VET to university, and we don't know exactly how it will end, because the draft is still being worked on it. Then regarding the challenges and some of the need for standardization, there are some new challenges because we have the European universities, so students can have different pathways. In these European universities, they could even have some work-based learning in those European universities if they have provided this kind of pathways. But we don't really know how it will work. I mean, there is a European project as well that FDO is coordinating or leading, and ENQUA is there as well. So hopefully we will have some outcomes in the next year, I guess, because they will pilot in some reviews. I think that it was this year when they were doing that. And regarding micro-credentials, there is another European project that ENQUA is involved as well. And they are working on that and on establishing some kind of standards for micro-credentials. There are some previous initiatives, because in New Zealand they have a whole scheme for micro-credentials that work quite okay. So I think that we could see what they are doing there and learn from what's already done.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva. Thank you all panelists. Thank you all participants and for your interest and for your contribution to our webinar and ideas for our further developments and yours for the further developments. And as it was mentioned to you before, all presentations and access to the manuals will be emailed to you. And I wish you all a lot of success and invite to follow Eurasia's agenda in future. Thank you a lot and see you in future.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.